Welcome, North Carolina exporters. Good morning, everybody. We're delighted that you're all here with us today. And we're really excited to see so many of you have registered and shown interest in this new program to help North Carolina exporters grow their international business. So we're really excited about this. And as I said, we're delighted to be here today to explain the new program to you and talk to you about websites and the international markets and the online world for that. Now, before we actually start, and just to let the last stragglers to log on, I wanted to do a little tiny bit of housekeeping. So just to set the background, we'll do a little tiny bit of housekeeping here. Um, so this webinar is part of actually a series of webinars that we offer our clients about international websites and online marketing, global online marketing. So there's a lot of website catalog that you can get on and look at in the past, everything from, the online market of Mexico to social media in China, all those things that are there for you, and they're free of charge to download and listen to at any time. This webinar today is going to be about 45 minutes long. And during the webinar, we're going to do 3 polls. This is when you take your mouse and you click on things that answer that you want to answer. So these are polls during the webinar, and they're really helpful to try and make sure that we're on trend and on target. There's also a live Q&A at the end of the webinar, and please, we encourage your questions. Just drop questions into the chat box, and we'll be creating the questions and getting to them at the end of the webinar. And anything we don't have time for, we'll get back to you directly. But please, we encourage any questions. Nothing is too simple, too complex, too esoteric when it comes to the online world. And if we don't have the answer, we'll get back to you. I've also dropped a little handout during this webinar that you can pick up, and I'll show you how and when. And finally, there's a survey at the end of this webinar. And again, we would be really, really appreciative if you could just spend the 10 seconds that it takes to fill out that survey, again, helping us to make sure that we're on trend and answering the questions you want us to answer. So you'll all be sent a recording and the slide deck from this webinar on Wednesday. So you don't even have to take notes. You can just sit back, relax, listen, and just understand how it all goes. And that's great. So let's just start off by sort of meeting the team. So I introduce myself first. My name is Susanna Hardy, and I am the Chief Content Officer for IBT Online. I'm actually sitting in the UK today, and that's fine. We might have some issues about Brexit and government and all that stuff, but our internet still works. So yeah, I've been with IBT for many years. Originally trained really more in finance, but also in marketing. And I'm now the Chief Content Officer, so I'm responsible for all content that we write for our own company and also for our clients at IBT Online. And also at IBT Online, you have John Worthington. Some of you might know him because he was in North Carolina, I think. He's the Chief Executive Officer of IBT and also the founder of the company, and is very happy to come over to North Carolina at the drop of a hat. Then there's Samantha Sofici on the call as well. She's an online business development manager for IBT. And again, you will see her very often in North Carolina or at trade shows, at meetings, and is a great resource for international companies. I am really, really pleased to introduce and to have together with us today Mike Hubbard to represent the Economic Development Partnership team of North Carolina. Mike's probably known to all of you already, but I want to give him a special shout out in appreciation for helping to get this new export initiative on the road and for being here. So he currently serves as the Director of International Trade for the Economic Development Partnership, that's the EDP of North Carolina. And he's really responsible for developing and also like putting into place the international strategies for the promotion of North Carolina products and services to globally, to markets across the world through export sales. And I'm sure that many of you already know him already. Now, a very brief word also on IBT, so who we are as a company. IBT stands for International Business and Technologies. and we've been around since 2002, so pretty long time in the internet side. We're 100% focused on building and managing and helping companies with their global websites, multilingual global websites. We are also very focused on small to mid-cap companies, medium-sized companies. So we know a lot about some of the issues and dilemmas that some of them have, and we're very cognizant of that. As I said, we're really focused on the online side. We are very pleased to be working already with 17 US states for online global programs and are absolutely delighted that North Carolina has signed up. It's a very, very innovative and very rewarding export assistance program for companies. So that's sort of us. We have a website if you want to learn more about us. What we're going to talk about today, so getting down to the program, I thought I'd sort of split it up into a couple of big nuggets that you could really sort of look at them, just to give you first a sort of overview of the online world, or the global side of it, and how North Carolina exporters can use that and what you need to do from our perspective. Then drill down a little bit about what it means to actually have a localized website. So what are multilingual websites? How do they function? What does it mean? Then some examples of how North Carolina exporters, how you all can use some of these localized websites. And I've taken case studies from other states and other mid-cap companies in other states. And then some detail about the North Carolina Online Global Program. And finally, some questions. So we got a lot to talk about today. But as I said, you can always listen to it again. Now I'm going to pass the mic over to Mike, just to talk briefly about the EDPC and the partnership and how it can help. Mike, do you want to just take that?
Sure. Good morning. Thanks all of you for joining us. Most of you probably know EDPNC, at least if you've worked with us, you've worked with the international trade team. But so you know, EDPNC works with all things North Carolina. We're broken up into 5 different divisions. One is business recruitment, bringing companies into the state to set up business and do business here. Another is existing industry support, companies that are already here when they're going through expansion or workforce development, that sort of thing. They work with companies. Small business support, the Blink team works with startups, companies, what do they need to know to get started doing business here in the state. The tourism team, you see the ads all the time, and that's all out of this office. And then finally, as you know, the international trade team working with companies to export. We work with companies in a variety of ways. Some of you have been with us to trade shows. You've taken advantage of grants to do translations. Worked with any one of our 6 foreign offices to do distributor searches or market research, but also web promotion. You know, exports are not just going to shows and selling things. It's having that presence there all the time, particularly as the world moves to more of an e-platform. And so you want to go ahead and forward. Susanna, you want to go ahead and forward to the next things. So you can see all the things that we do. We do a wide variety of things, but with the website development, we want companies to be able to find you, and then you want to have a credible platform and companies so that they understand exactly what it is that you do. One other thing that we have is a grant called STEP. It's available for small businesses, and STEP can be utilized to help pay for the optimization of the localization of your website. You want to go ahead and forward to the next one? See our team. This is our, go ahead and forward to the next one. You can see our trade team. We're broken up. We have 5 international trade managers that work with specific industries. They work statewide, everything from defense, and Kuldeep is here with us working with defense, computers, electronics. Michael Cole, life sciences, chemicals. Blake Jackman is actually at the Paris Air Show this week, works with aerospace and transportation, automotive. Glenn Jackman, textiles and the marine industry, and Liz Isley works with the furniture and the agribusiness industry. You see our entire team here. Please, if you have not reached out to us already about STEP, please do, and we will get you signed up and make sure you qualify for that so you can take advantage of that to offset the cost of website optimization. Thanks.
Mike, thank you very, very much. And just to make sure that you're all like, on board here, I'm going to launch our first poll. So here we go. This is, you know, um, has your company already used some of the North Carolina export assistance programs? Have you been there? Um, so, have you done so? Yes. Ooh, the big, big, big majority of you saying yes successfully over many years, which is fantastic. And then some of you, yes, occasionally. But I'm happy to see that absolutely 100% of this audience has already used export assistance programs from North Carolina. So that's terrific. Okay, great. And now we've actually practiced a poll as well. So I'm very happy. Now let's move on to the online benefits, as it were, the big topic that we're going to talk about, our first chapter, the online world. Well, I sort of wanted to give a little preamble to this. I thought about this. I said, well, in many ways, whatever your route to market, whether it's B2B or B2C, as a company, you need to help your prospective clients go down their buyer's journey successfully. Typically, this journey is broken down into sort of three stages. Your prospect has to be aware of you, they have to consider you as a potential supplier, and then they have to have reasons to decide in your favor. So there's awareness, consideration, decision. Now, those are typically the stages that one talks about in the buyer's journey for that. And your job as a salesman, as a marketeer, as a director of your company is to help your prospects find you, consider you, and trust you enough to decide in your favor. And as the internet really is ubiquitous over the world, localized websites help, to say the least. So when I talk about ubiquitous, it really, really is. Well over 4 billion of us are now plugged in to the internet, and not just plugged in occasionally. The average time spent on the internet globally is 6 hours a day. So there's 4.5 billion people on the internet for about half their waking day every day. And all that's despite controversy over fake news, privacy, hacking, all that. So it really is, a, ubiquitous. And it's not just you in North Carolina. You say, "Oh my God, the internet is just everywhere. I can't get rid of it. It's on my phone. It's on my iPad. It's on my home. Driving home. It's nonstop. It's the same everywhere." So it really is, and it's still growing. In 2018, internet use across the world grew by 9%, which is pretty amazing too. And what's everyone doing? Well, they're basically chatting. They're communicating, they're sending emails, they're looking at pictures, at videos, and so on. And a lot of it has to do with this communication, and we'll get back to that later. So, how has the internet affected how you do business? Um, I want to share this little diagram with you. It's very schematic, but it serves my purpose. Basically, the internet has forced all businesses to be much more customer centric, and it's forced us all for that. So your clients, your prospects, your future employees, your suppliers, everybody can check you out. And talking to each other, they get views and news about who they should do business with. And obviously, this is not just in North Carolina, or indeed not just in the USA. This applies to all markets everywhere. For example, that 6.5 hour average time on the internet that I mentioned, the USA is about 6 hours per day. Places like the Philippines is more like 9 hours a day. So basically, you can expect and know that all your export prospects are also looking online for you, at you, and so on. Now, how has this come about? How has the internet forced us all to be so customer centric in business? Well, basically, we just have to, look around and say, if we're all online like this, then we can also get found and be understood and do business using websites. So that's our first sort of, big takeaway here is that everybody at the moment, in today's world, is online. So all of your clients, all your prospects are online. So one of the best ways to get a hold of them is online. And with them, you can do that buyer's journey of being found, understood, do business awareness, consideration, decision using your website. Let's talk a little bit about what we mean by website localization and how that sort of pans out in terms of a business and what tools you need. The best way that I have to talk about website localization is to go back to some of this basics, some of the core of the websites or some of the core of the internet, which is basically search engines. Um, Search engines are searcher centric. Or if you like, customer centric. They're searcher centric. This means that someone in Canada goes on to Google Canada. It's not the same as Google in North Carolina or the Google I have in the UK or Australia. So search engines try to satisfy the searcher rather than the company trying to be found. So if a business located in Toronto looks on to the internet for a supplier, Google will prioritize companies that are most relevant to that searcher. So though most relevant to that searcher means based near Toronto, or at least in Canada. That's suit a Canadian audience. So for example, have Canadian dollar prices, use metric measurements. So the search engine scours through all these billions of documents and information bits, and it does two things. It gives the results that are relevant or useful to the searcher's question, and then it ranks those results and says which are the most popular, which are the most relevant, which are the best ones, which are the best websites, which are the best design, and so on. So it's both relevance and popularity. And this is sort of an important concept to think about when you're looking at website localization. It's really the key to the entire thing. Now, here's an example. Samantha in Florida, I said, Samantha, go on to google.com, which is her Google, and do red shoes. What do you get? Because we were talking about clothes. So Samantha did red shoes, and she gets things like Nordstrom and Zappos and Macy's. And I'm sitting in London, and I'd go google.co.uk. That's Google in the UK, and I do red shoes, and I get very different things. I get very different stores. I get things that are relevant to me sitting in the UK. So it's a very different find, and that's on something as banal and as sort of pervasive, something like red shoes. So this is just a trivial example, but I think nonetheless worth thinking about. Now I've listed here on this screen the sort of the 10 big criteria that we have to define a localized website. And obviously, it is customer centric. Therefore, it is all about the end client or prospect in your export market. So, yes, translation. Translation fully adapted to local language is one aspect of it, but only one aspect. There's a lot of other things that go into a localized website. As you can see, these 10 here that I've listed in particular. And I really wanted to just give you a brief landscape, a brief brush through of some of the key ones that I think might be worthwhile to really go through. Look at these ones, for example. These are the ones that we feel intrinsically build trust for your export audience. So they're in the background. Perhaps they're not the most sort of the ones that strike you first. It's not about user experience, for example, but it's about building trust, which you need as well for that buyer's journey. If you go onto someone's website and there's a great big, warning sign saying not secure, not compliant, then obviously you're not going to trust that brand very much. So you need to be digitally compliant. That includes being digitally compliant if you're looking at Europe with GDPR, and I'll get back to that in a moment. It means also being digitally recognizable. So it means having the right domain names, the right URLs, about being hosted locally. Obviously, it means about, faultless translation. And obviously it has, culturally appropriate images and so on. But it also has the right keywords. Let me just give some examples. First, about the techie side. So there are sort of, these are the two big sort of things that one would look at in a tech side. The one is hosting. And in order to upload and download quickly and to be ranked by search engines, you need to host locally. So if you have a website which is hosted in North Carolina, you're going to have difficulties having good speeds, up and down speeds, even in places like, I don't know, France. And the search engine in France, Google France, won't like you because you're not hosted anywhere in Europe. Content management systems are basically the architecture that systems that people use to build websites. Some of them are great. Some of them are less good at multilingual, international, global websites. You have to have the right ones and the right versions of those right ones. So it's not an automatic that just sort of anyone can build you a multilingual site. You need to have the right content management system. Let's talk a bit about that digital compliance that I mentioned earlier. This is an absolute, you know, tsunami coming at the internet. And please, if there's one thing that you take away from this, please make sure that you are digitally compliant if you have international websites. Probably the top or the leader along that curve is Europe with this General Data Protection Regulation, the GDPR. Um, it really is the right thing to do in a way. It's about privacy and it's about who owns the information, rather than letting Google and Amazon and whoever it is use the information as they will. So it really is the top end of compliance in that sense, and a lot of countries are looking closely at it and really mimicking it. Even the California Consumer Privacy Act is basically a mimic of the GDPR. Other countries looking at GDPR and rolling out their own versions: Japan, Australia, Colombia, Canada. So this is something that you need to have for your websites. Obviously, all websites that we will build for North Carolina companies, including anything done in Europe, will be totally compliant and including GDPR compliant. And that's quite a big ask. That means all kinds of privacy policies and all kinds of data sheets that we'll give you for free, or as part of the package, I should say. Just talking about design, we are not about to reinvent the wheel. You already have a US website, which gives you great, you've probably angsted and fretted about the design. It gives you, your US website's great, I'm sure. So we won't be putting into question your US website or any design unless you want us to. But we will probably have to do a couple of tweaks, just a few necessary tweaks. Much of that has to do with language. I've given two examples here. Chinese, which if you have the wrong fonts or if you're using a lot of bold, just does not come out. You can't read it for any of those kind of characters. You just can't read it if it's bold. So you need to do some other things. Equally, some languages, in fact, many languages are slightly longer than in English. Not just the words, like that example I've given you in German, but the total amount is probably about between 15 and 20% longer. So again, but don't worry, again, we'll do that for you and make sure that it all fits and is correct. Another major thing is mobile and mobile enablement. Mobile is really absolutely a given in today's world. Of those 4.5 billion on the internet, well, 4 billion are using their active, mobile phone users. And again, this is not just for the emerging markets. If you want to get into the Indonesian market, for example, 80% of internet access is via mobile phone. That's true as well for many, many markets like that. I mean, even India, for example. But it's also true of existing mature markets. The case I've given you here, that example, is for Italy. So you have to be mobile enabled. Translation, and this is obvious. This is the obvious one. Yes, of course. All I have to do is translate my website, right? But it's more than translation. If just translating a website, it reads like a translated website. It has to be better than that. It has to be written really by a native and a native by that country. So if you're aiming for a Mexican website, it needs to be done by a Mexican Spanish. Not just for keywords, but for the whole way it reads. And again, this has to do with trust, with building trust, building assurance with your prospects and your prospective clients. This is an example of what happens about translation as well. This is what's called keyword research. I'm sure you're all doing that for your US website as well. But when you get to international markets, it's really important to know the detail. And the internet is all about the detail. So here's an example of a major word, the word car. The word car in Spanish or in Spain or in Mexico differs. If you're in the car industry or a supplier or you make a widget, whatever mechanical product for the car industry, car is going to be a major keyword for your ability to be found on the internet. You have to make sure that you are using the right kind. And there's a lot of examples of this. Um, you know, uh, Portuguese, Brazilian is very different from Portuguese and Portuguese. So the keywords and the keyword research is key to making sure, sorry, that's a bad pun, but is absolutely essential for making sure that you're found and found by the right people. So these two pie charts, I think, speak for themselves. Obviously, in Spain, 91% of the people looking for anything regarding cars in Spain would search for coche. And if you're in Mexico, 73% are looking for auto. So if you're using the wrong word, you're really, really limiting your ability to be found in these markets. So that's the kind of example. Again, when we're building websites for you, we will be doing this keyword research for you in those target markets. We talked also about URLs. URLs is basically your domain name. This is a horrible, horrible slide. It's got way too much stuff on it, but it shows you a screenshot of the kind of little table that we go through when we're making sure that we design the right URL for you. So who are you targeting? In which market are you targeting? And how important is it for you to get that country or that target market? And that will decide your top level domain name, subdomains, and so on. And again, we'll take that headache out, from away from you by just going through it with you, because we've got enough experience to know how to do that in each market and show you which ones are the right ones to use for those markets. And then for sometimes they're hard to get, we can get them for you. So here's an example. Of a client of ours, and I said, well, I don't want to have. I want to have a website for Latin America, but I really want to target quite a few of those. I'd say smaller countries, all in the top end of of Latin America, and so I don't want to just target like Colombia or something. I want to target a whole region. So we got them a .lat domain name. That takes a little bit longer to get good traction and good rankings, but that's okay. We just supplement that with a bit of marketing and it goes. And that way they've got a domain name for the entire Latin America, which is what they wanted, and then can really feed that into their distributors and so on, and have a Latin American website for several countries in Latin America. As I said, not all domain names are easy to get. And this example here is, for China. That's, notoriously difficult to get because you have to have a Chinese registered address and all kinds of things. And then the paperwork can be extraordinary. So you really have to, be on the phone and chase them. And, oh, it's really annoying, but it's okay. We've got the experience to do that. And in some countries, I mean, sometimes even surprising. I mean, take Australia. Australia, you cannot buy an Australian website, domain name, unless you have an Australian address and so on. So again, we can do that for you, and then we'd sell you the domain name at price. So we just transfer the ownership directly to you. So again, taking that headache away from you. But it's really important to have those top level domain names, because otherwise, the person in China or Australia or wherever it is you've got your website is not going to recognize you as a local and not going to treat you as a potential person, a company that they can really engage with and trust as a nearby. And equally, the search engines will not accept you as really relevant to their local audience. So those are the key parts of localization that I wanted to go through out of those 10 big criteria. And as I said, translation is one little aspect. Keywords, compliance, the technology that goes behind it, domain names, all of those are also just as important. Let's look at some examples of how North Carolina exporters can use some of these localized websites. And I've taken examples from other states around around North Carolina that we already have clients in, and hopefully some of these you can identify with and can have a and say, oh, that's just like me. I can figure that one out. So here's one. This is a company. It's a mid cap company, and they're based in Michigan, um, owner managed. They have a product which is very hard to have a brand recognition in, and very hard to have any real different product differentiation. It's very hard to know that. But one thing's clear: if you're not out there as a local, as appearing local at least, you will not be regarded as a potential supplier. So it was really great. Ann Bullman, the CEO of this company, has done the equivalent of a North Carolina Online Global program several years in a row, and she now has the benefit of about 8 or 9 websites because she does 2 a year. um, and really, the websites are there to support the distributors. They're the distributor is then able to go on to the German website and say, look, these are our products. Here they are. This is what they do. This is their unique selling point. And it's all in German. You can understand it easily, and their examples, and so on. So these are really, really great ways of doing it. But what was really important for this company was to have a window on the end client as well, so that the distributor did not have all the cards in his hand, so that the distributor acted really and focused on getting leads, but also on the logistics, on the trade shows and things like that, and that the company, Pullman Products, could really focus on generating new leads, and also on collecting the data from that, because in fact otherwise the distributor acted as a bit of a blind. So the website allowed the company to have a visibility on the end client, as well as feeding the distributor, which I think is an interesting aspect to it. This is a slightly larger company. I think they're quite well known in the States. But again, it's hard to get branded. It's synthetic motor oil. So they want to, how you go in, you ask for synthetic motor oil. You don't necessarily ask for AMS oil. So they wanted to build that brand recognition. Again, the website is used to generate leads for distributors. So they have in-market partners, and the website is used for lead generation and for brand awareness. Interestingly enough, they also use the website for market knowledge, in order to say, they say, okay, there's a market there we need to expand our business, or we need to get into for the first time. Let's use our website via questions, via social media, for example, to try and find out more about this market. And again, it's been a good success for them. Their distributors really liking it, and they're beginning to get some brand recognition in key markets that they via their website. Um, this is a company which, they sell very, very specific products, very tech, very specific, very manufactured, and they really needed to be online in an e-commerce functionality in Brazil. And anyone who's ever done business in Brazil knows that it's very tricky market, not an easy market, very heavy, very administrative, and especially in the e-commerce. Huge market, and huge e-commerce market, but tricky. And so we were able to build this little website for them, which functions totally in a Brazilian context, and appears for a Brazilian, totally compliant, and able to be to really satisfy their demands in Brazil. So that's again something they've managed to do very well in the Brazilian market. I want to give you this example as well. Uh, Avionics Support Group, they make very techy things for the avionics industry. They have good in-market partners. They have like agents in key markets, like places like China and things. They're great agents, but they're not necessarily engineers. And it's hard sometimes for the engineer to explain the product in full to their prospective clients. And the website, they had an American website only. Once we built them a Chinese website, The first one they built was China because that was a big prospect market for them. They got their largest order ever within 3 months of having the Chinese website. And it's interesting to know why. There's a big obvious reason, which was that the end client understood finally the technology behind the product. Said, oh, now I finally really understand, because the agent, although good, was not able to understand explain all the technical aspects. The second thing I think is also more subtle. The Chinese prospect also said, now I also believe that you're dedicated to this market, that you understand this market, and that you're not going to be, pull out very quickly. You're actually here to stay. You actually invested in a website. So, this is great. So I'm interested to hear more about you now. And I see that you care about us. And again, we get back to that buyer's journey about generating trust for these markets. Um, all of these examples I've given you, by the way, have testimonials on our website, and I would really encourage you to. I mean, just if you've got a YouTube link here, go on to our website, check out what Hugo, the vice president, has to say about the websites and what he's done with it. The China one was so successful, he's now built, again, kind of like the other company, uh, of the two more websites a year for the last 2 years, and now has about sort of 6 of them. And then came to us and said, could you do our US website? Because it's a mess. So we actually sort of reversed and did their US website as well. So we first started out doing all their international ones and then went back to their US one to try to make it a nicer website. And the picture on the top, the picture on the bottom there is their old website, which wasn't even mobile enabled. You went on a mobile phone and it didn't even look right. So very proud to be doing that with Hugo and ASG Group. As I said, if you go onto our website, you'll see a lot of different testimonials from clients, and you'll hopefully find a narrative that speaks directly to you, and that you'll be able to understand it and say, oh, that's just like us. What did they do? Let's talk now about the online global program for North Carolina and what you can do here. So this is something that we're really excited about. Ooh, how about this? I should launch another poll. I think I forgot to do it earlier. How about this? This should have been earlier. But before we get on to North Carolina online global program, let me launch this poll. Do you have localized websites already? Do you have localized websites for your export markets? Do you have them for a few export markets, for all export markets? Are you thinking about it? Where are you on this? So if you could sort of, if this is something that interests you, and I'm just looking at it, some of you have them for a few export markets. A couple of you have them for all export markets, but most of you are thinking about it. So I'm pleased to see that. It's just changed, actually. I would say about a third of you have them for a few export markets. So we're delighted that you have them for some export markets, and hopefully that this can encourage you to roll out more of them and to understand more about it. Thank you very much. I'm going to close that poll. Now let's talk a little bit about the North Carolina Online Global Program. We have a dedicated page on our website for you exporters, for North Carolina exporters, and you can see it there. It's ivt.onl for North Carolina, and that'll give the full details of it if you want to go through it a bit more. But in brief, really, there are two options, and there's option A. Option A basically costs you, the company, $12,000. And if you're eligible, you can get a $2,000 grant reimbursed from the EDP, as Mike was saying. So that makes $10,000. For those $10,000, you get 2 websites in any market that you want, internationally, any market at all. And those markets, those websites will be fully localized. That means they'll be GDPR compliant and digitally compliant and keyword researched and hosted in the right place and translated properly and mobile enabled and all those aspects that we talked about. So 2 markets in any country that you want, any countries that you want for that. And the total cost for you is $10,000. And I don't know if any of you have done websites before, but I can tell you that is a terrific value. And we're really, really excited to be able to bring this to North Carolina exporters for this. It typically takes us 3 months from start to finish. And we work on a system which allows you to have total transparency as we work, and to share documents and to see where we are on all projects. And knock on wood, we're pretty well stuck to that 3 months, that 3 month deadline. So that's a good, if you were to put in the request now in June, by September, you would be having 2 international multilingual websites. Option B really is for anything else. It's if you say I don't actually want these sites. What I want is an e-commerce site which has a privacy area here, which has a payment area there, a downloadable and uploadable, and all that. Then it's a different thing. We will still build it for you. Typically, again, it'll take us 3 months. But the budget is more dependent upon how many bells and whistles you want on each website. It is a pretty transparent thing to do the pricing. It's just a matter of really time spent on and the assistance given for the website. And again, we've done a lot of e-commerce sites, if that's what's interesting for you, or we've done a lot of sites of different sizes and different scopes. But again, you are potentially eligible for reimbursement of $2,000 from the Economic Development Partnership of North Carolina, and as Mike was saying earlier. So those are the 2 options. So it's a simple offer. Option A, 2 websites within 3 months that are fully localized, but are limited in scope. They're not e-commerce sites, for example. Or option B is something that you want, but is specific and tailored, cut specifically for what you want. So just sort of summarizing before we get on to the questions, because I do see that there's I'm very happy to see that there are some questions in there. So let's just summarize a little bit. I guess there's two things that we would like to really say. The first is that the world is online, that all of your prospects in your export markets are online, that they expect you to be online, and that they will look for you in their local online environments. And if you're not there, they won't find you necessarily. And the second point, really, leading on from that, is that whatever your route to market, it's B2B, B2C, B2 government, whichever route to market, a localized website allows you to get found, to be understood, to do business, and to have that buyer's journey that we talked about in the beginning, the awareness, consideration, and decision that you need to do business well and grow your business internationally. So these are websites that allow you really to get found, be understood, and do business in whichever market you're looking for. So what are the next steps? The next step is quite simple. Get in touch. I'm sure you all know these partnership, your partnership within North Carolina, and can find them and have their details. If not, we also have you also saw Mike Hubbard's details in the front. But the first step is really just to get in touch and say, I'm interested in this, and I'd like to find out more. I'd like to apply, and so on. So that's the sort of roundup. I've kept the 45 minutes exactly. I do see there's a couple of questions up, and so we're going to get on to some questions now. Actually one of the very first questions I have, Mike, actually is for you, if that's okay, Mike. The very first question I have is, how do I apply? Mike, have you got that one?
Reach out to me or Jen Fogelsberg, who is our STEP grant manager, and we can tell you about the program, how to apply for it. It's an online, a very easy process to apply for the STEP grant.
Thanks, Mike.
But just reach out to us and we'll answer all your questions.
Okay, I have another question for you as well, Mike, is can I use step grant for this as well as for other things? I guess it's how often can I use a step grant? I guess is the question.
Yeah, sure. The way the North Carolina STEP grant is measured, you can do different things. We have travel reimbursements for if you're exhibiting at a trade show, booth reimbursements when you're exhibiting on your own at a trade show. Of course, this website optimization, translation, gold key services as well are included in that. So yes, you can use multiple services.
Perfect. Thank you. There's a question I think which is for me, which is which markets are best to start in for online websites. Um, this really depends on you. I guess there's two responses we get. Typically, exporters will look at sort of, the 4, 5, 6 huge export markets. So, and for North Carolina, it's places like, Mexico, Canada, Europe, Japan, maybe Saudi Arabia, maybe China. So those are some of the big export destinations that a lot of North Carolina exporters are looking at. And it probably is going to be one of those big markets that you can decide on. But I think the most important thing is to decide which market would benefit most from an online presence. And usually most of our clients pick their top market and say, we're doing really well in X market, in I don't know, Germany, for example. We've got a great in-market partner there. But I bet we could do, 10 times better if we actually had a website. So typically our clients go for the market where they're doing best, and they say, here, we're going to really add something to this. And that is also the fastest return on investment that you can have, is to add to the market where you're doing well in. And that's, I think, what we see most of our clients doing. Um, Another question I have, which I sort of, perhaps I wasn't clear, um, if you are buying, if we buy the domain name, that top level domain name, that URL, who owns the website? Um, Without a doubt, you, the company, own the website. We don't own the website. Even in an example that I gave you, I think I gave you the example of Australia. If we buy a domain name, we pass it on to you. We pass ownership onto you directly, and you own the website. You are responsible for the website. Well, we'll help you manage it. We'll help you do it, but um, uh, you own the website. That's clear. Another question here that I have is, do you give any help besides the website? Um, there's two aspects to the help that we give here. The first is in option A and option B, we give you technical support and learning. And I'm going to we give you up to 10 hours also of technical support during on any 12 months period for the smaller websites, and for the larger websites, we work it out depending on what you need. So anytime you have a problem, anytime you have a question or anything like that, we'll help you out with that. Equally, we give you training for the Google Analytics, for the understanding of it, for the upkeep of it, and we'll talk to your marketing department. The other source of help that we can give you is with online marketing and ongoing search engine optimization and advertisement. Again, this is something that we do for a lot of companies. We're very happy to do that. And indeed, the handout I've given I've attached to today's webinar is about global social media. And if you go onto the screen on the right-hand side of your screens, you should see a thing that's called handouts. And you should be able to just drag that directly onto your screen. And that's an infographic, which says, gives you an infographic view of global social media. So that's something that you could also look at in particular. I'm sort of going through some of the other questions. Videos are very important in the United States. Videos are just as important everywhere, and they're a fantastic tool. and they're incredibly good for return on investment as well. If a lot of markets, you don't even have to translate them. You can keep them in English if you've got them on their US website, and then just add. And what we'll do is we'll add subtitles to your video, and we'll do the keyword research and add the right subtitles to your video and then post that. It's really fantastic for search engine optimization. It's great for uploads. So really a really good thing to do. Yes, videos. And videos are a fantastic way also of getting a message across very quickly to a foreign audience. You think they're working well in the US, you should try them in some of these markets, especially the sort of very, I would say, internet responsive markets. I mean, they're examples I can give you, which are kind of hilarious almost. We will post something in the, on a US website and on a video, and we'll get, 1,000 responses. Post something in Mexico, you get 10,000 responses. They are just so internet and video focused. Um, what is the annual hosting fee? An annual hosting fee for the first year is included in the price of option A. So it's included in your $12,000. Thereafter, there's an annual hosting fee of $1,000 per year, and that's all. And again, the $1,000 includes also at least 10 hours of help. Just email or text us if you've got any issues or any problems or want to learn anything more or be taught how to use a CRM or Google Analytics or whatever, or do any translation. So the annual hosting fee is $1,000 after that first year. So if you need to go further with a website, if you say, okay, now I've got that website, I've had it now for a year, I want to expand it. Again, we can easily do that for you. And I think Mike said that you could, you could do the same step grant again for either other markets or for upgrading the existing one. There's a lot of other questions. Sorry. Um, uh, um, I'm not sure. Do you? I'm I'm trying to read the questions at the same time. I'm sorry. E-commerce is a major topic. Obviously, there's a lot of markets for that. The e-commerce enablement is not included in the option A in the 12,000 because we need to know what you need to have on the e-commerce, what payments, payment you need to have on it, where are you linking it to distributor platforms. So there's a lot of different other toggles to include in that. But you can still have a micro website and then make it e-commerce enabled. But it's not the template of the option A. It would come into option B. So we have to define exactly what you needed, which market, which platforms, which security payments you're having, and so on. Um, uh, uh, by the way, yes, you will have a copy of this slide deck and recording in your inbox by Wednesday for all of you. So they're easily got. Just one last question. Again, you cannot use videos. You can use videos in China. Yes, China is a very video market as well. Remember, though, YouTube is banned in China. So there are China-specific platforms that you would use. Just like, you're not going to use Google or any of the US or other international companies. China is very China specific and China centric. So you would use Baidu, you would use WeChat, Weibo, and so on, and you would not use YouTube. As I said, it's banned in China. So but you have a Chinese equivalent, which is actually a very good equivalent. It's a very good one. Um, Yes, ooh, I can answer a few other questions perhaps. Maybe it's best if I answer you directly because some of the other questions are very specific to individual companies. So I think I will email you the answers. That'd be easier for all of you rather than having to listen to individual answers. I want to thank the North Carolina team, Mike and his team, and John and Lasek and his team so much at the EDP for helping us to organize this webinar, for being there, and all of you for attending and listening. We're really excited to be able to roll out this program in North Carolina. It's been a tremendous success in other states, and I'm sure that with a great team like EDP, you're going to have a great success in North Carolina as well. Last thing before you log off, please, please, please answer our survey. There you go. Thank you again, everybody. Happy exporting, and we'll be in touch if required.